Loading snacks.
What it do, snackers, snackettes, and snack X's? It's your boy Gage. I'm here with Jokes and Frosty, and it is time for another episode of Spoiler Boys
Spoiler boys.
and Girl. How's everybody feeling?
Pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah. That was a lie.
Yes.
The version of a lie.
That is so awesome.
It's okay to say exhausted. Totally. We've all had a long weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's been busy. It's cool. But the Star Wars never stops.
Ever.
I feel like we could put that on a shirt.
I agree.
The Star Wars never stops. And so because that war in a galaxy far, far away is so ongoing, we have to talk about episode 3 of The Acolyte, which is what we are here to spoil for you. I am going to say this, even though I feel like I shouldn't have to say this. There will be spoilers.
No, for real?
I can't be here. Spoilers, my least favorite thing. What are you talking about?
What if I didn't watch the episode?
Yeah, you gotta go.
Is that a prerequisite to being here? Shit.
Yeah. There will be spoilers. I feel like there are people out there who maybe just don't get that. So that's for you. And now you know. We probably won't just spoil this episode. We'll probably spoil the last two as well. This episode, I think comes in a bit differently in that, unlike the first two episodes, which we were given together. So we got episodes 1 and 2 at the same time. They gave us the ability to binge, right? And in this one, it's a one and done. We're in, and now we just kind of have to wait. And I think there's something to that, but we'll discuss it. In this episode, we're in a complete flashback. While I will say that I was expecting flashbacks, I don't know that I was necessarily expecting it to be a full episode that was a flashback. Was that surprising to either of you?
That was actually that was a very common theme for the podcast for Black Squadron. We even had a guest. She said the exact same thing. Like, definitely expecting every once in a while to hit that flashback, but to have 1 out of 8 episodes be just an entire flashback episode was definitely a surprise.
Yeah, like I thought when it kicked in, we started there. I was like, okay, first 10 minutes, we're going to get like literally the whole backstory in 10 minutes and then just jump back and then go from there. But no, we just took the whole episode to kind of, at least I guess you could say, flush it out a little bit more. There's still questions in there, but I feel like it gave a little bit more than just that quick, oh, here you go.
Yeah.
So here's what this did to me. This episode kind of changed my entire outlook on what this show is likely to be, and like what the basis or the feeling of what this show is likely to be. And here's why. So this show is kind of based in some of the old, like, samurai, like Seven Samurai and some of that kind of stuff, right? And in a lot of those old movies, films, what they would do is they would show you or tell you the story from multiple perspectives. So you weren't just getting one. I have a feeling that this is one of at least 3 flashbacks that could be whole episodes.
That'd be a lot for an 8-episode series, though.
It would, but it might be important. And I only say that because obviously we're going to get into some of the specifics of the episode, but this episode basically seems to be told only from OSHA's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like we may get episodes that are from May's perspective and or from the Jedi perspective
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
of like what happened and how it happened.
I don't know
Because
that we'd get like full episodes of that though, because it's just like we've seen a lot of that same stuff. It would probably be like going back.
yeah, I don't know if I think full episodes would be overkill. Um but I also think that we could get flashbacks that are not of this exact moment. That's
Yeah.
not this. That like, in this episode we start out we're in Brendok. The kids are in the forest and eventually we see that like the Jedi are watching. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
there and they're keeping an eye out. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get a flashback of some sort that details what was going on leading up to that moment. Like from the
From
Jedi
the Jedi.
perspective, right? And then maybe what happened after that moment. Like that
Mm-hmm.
gap between Osha being knocked out and then waking up on the ship and then
Mm-hmm.
being told, like asking what happened and then being told, here's what happened,
Right.
right? Um, that we could get some of that. But I also think that there's a possibility that there could be flashback that is of May from that point forward,
Forward.
right? That is like I fell down here and then I woke up and this is what happened to me as a child from this point
Mm-hmm.
up,
Right.
right? That we're still kind of having, because I don't really think you can continue to tell this story without we need more
Telling
flashbacks.
both sides. You got
Yeah,
to have both sides
absolutely.
in there.
I think there are three sides. That's the thing that's weird
That's
about it.
yeah. If not
Um,
three, like it's definitely two, but there you'd be missing out on a whole nother story.
well, it's interesting to me because, and again, like we'll get into it, but most of the time, right? At least in terms of television and film, the the force is very like bilateral. It is dark side, light side, and that
Mm-hmm.
is all
It.
that there. And this is already exploring the idea of the force just being a thing that can be used and isn't necessarily dark side or light side, though it would probably be considered that any use of the force outside
Outside of
of
the Jedi.
Jedi manipulation is in
It's
fact considered dark side, but may not be seen that way
by the
by
wielders.
by anyone else. And so like hearing the force referred to more as a thread as opposed to being the force. The idea of it being something to be pulled. Like when you hear the word the force, it makes it sound like a weapon. No matter how
Yeah.
you say it, it's a force. So it is something that exerts energy on something else. And hearing Mother Anastasia talk about it being a thread and pulling on that thread and how that affects the quote unquote force, not necessarily saying force, but that it's a
Yeah.
thread and how it's attached to everything. And so now we're talking about the difference between pushing and pulling. Um, and it's not quite as definitive as light and dark,
Yeah.
I think. And so I do think that some of that perspective is there to be explored. But before we get into that, there is another slight detail that I just want to ask if it caught either of your eyes. Um, the title of this episode is Destiny,
Mhm.
but the title of the first two episodes, the first episode is lost slash found,
Mm-hmm.
and the second episode is revenge
Ren.
slash justice. There are opposites, quote unquote, that are used in the title for the titling of this, and this is just destiny.
That's,
Do you think that is significant in some way? Did either of you notice that?
Yes.
I noticed that, I didn't initially think too much of it, but then how we were talking like the last episode where, or at least me, like they're like two halves of the same whole. Because like when they start talking about how once the Jedi find out how they were made, it started to open up. Now, granted, they did the same Anakin thing. Who was the father? There was no father. Like the same exact catalyst. And then we go through medical. I took some blood. Medical. Look, we know what you're doing. Um, so it seems like I think that is going to have a significance as we continue through the series forward.
For like our thought process, like we were considering the fact that the first two episodes you kind of get the view from both twins, whereas this one is just Osha. So you're only getting the one
One side.
side. So like maybe the next episode is one word, and at some point down the line, a next episode will go back to the two where they're
So
doing it in two. Yeah.
We went away from the, and that again to me is one of the reasons why because when I looked at the titles for the first two episodes, I just kind of automatically thought, oh, that's going to be what the structure is. Like there'll always
hmm
be two kind of opposite ends pulling for the title of every episode. And then when they didn't do that for this, I was like, well, that's
that's a little different.
weird, right? And so that made me think, well, then the next episode maybe it's going to be geared towards May and like
Yeah.
following her story, and probably that it will be in some manner flashback, or at least again picking up from
At
that
least
point.
partially. Yeah.
Yeah, and following that. So I just thought that was interesting. And it kind of made me think. I feel like a little bit differently about the episode, and again the structure of the show itself.
hmm
Um, we opened in this show um, under the Bunta tree.
The very
Uh,
poisonous tree.
very poisonous Bunta tree. You know, and Osha's just kind of chilling by herself. And then we see her, for lack of a better way of saying it, I'm gonna call it a butterfly. Maybe in Star Wars world it's a fairy. Maybe it's a fairy.
Yeah.
Um, we see her use the force to hold the butterfly
hmm
in place, in my opinion, to kind of like study it, like look at it, get a better look at it, kind of try to
Agree with
gain
that.
something of it. Um, and then she lets it go, and then here comes May, who does the same thing, but it seems like it's done with
A little force, a little
Malice.
hostility.
yeah, a little more intent in terms of like maybe harming, this, we'll call it a fairy this time. Why not? Does that feel significant? Like, does that feel to either of you like they were maybe trying to automatically force us to assume one's
Assume.
good and one's bad?
Yeah, that's the first thing. I'm like, okay, you're clearly putting this here, but either obviously as the story unwinds, there's gonna be some flip flop, or we're gonna learn something about their history that's gonna make it seem like, oh, maybe one became a little bit more of the light side because of an event, but the other one had the resentment and started going to. I don't know, but it seems like they are trying to put it in the normal sense that like, look, this is the good one, this is the evil one. I'm like, but it's too to me, it's a little too straightforward that they're just trying to push it forward like that.
So what I actually saw in that scene was Osha even giving a little bit of, not necessarily as a vicious aura, but it did still seem like she was doing this like action, knowing that it's probably affecting this creature
Hmm.
in not a great way.
Yeah,
So it was
I got
like,
that too.
yeah.
Um, there was a for me a little bit of like a that moment of like her yelling at her to like stop, and then saying like, why do you always have to do that? Like, why do you
Yeah.
always do that? And her response wasn't what I expected. I really kind of expected May to be like, you just did it. And like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, why,
Yeah.
or whatever. Um, but it also makes it seem like May just happens to have a better understanding of her abilities and how to use them.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest, it gets a little muddy for me further on because it also it also seems to me that maybe OSHA just doesn't really want to use them. Like she
Hmm.
just
Mhm.
isn't. Like she has them, but she doesn't necessarily feel good about using them no matter what. And so like even if she is holding this creature in place to study it, it still maybe doesn't feel so great for that, for that creature, right?
So I've kind of thought about this. I constantly use the parallel of a twin. She has shared something with someone her entire life. There's never been something of her own. And she's essentially being forced into this coven to utilize these powers in a way that they say you're supposed to, and she's
Mm-hmm.
never been allowed to think outside of that. But she's at an age where she's starting to figure out her own self, which
Hmm.
even Mother Coral says. I think it was Mother Coral, or maybe it was Aunt Saya. But
Yeah.
like they say, like she's a child, like she's figuring out where her boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's not that she doesn't want to use it, it's that she wants to be able to use it in a way
That she wants to.
exactly, it's not how they say it should be used.
Is there a? I mean, again, you brought it up, so I'm gonna lean into it. Um, you're speaking from the perspective of being a twin. Like, not everybody
Mhm.
who's watching this will necessarily
Right.
know you have a twin. So, speaking from a perspective of being a twin and maybe experiencing some of like just the way people will automatically just bottle you together,
Yep.
um, dress you the same way growing up, and
Yep.
you know, and so it also is a thing. Oddly enough, I have a lot of friends who are twins. It's kind of weird, but um, I have talked to a lot of people who are like, yeah, it kind of puts you in a position where you do search for an identity of your own that
Hmm.
separates you from always being tied directly to who this other person is,
Yeah.
separate from the expectations that people have from for other kids, something like that.
Absolutely.
Um, so that it makes a lot of sense to me. That but there also is a part of me that looks at it the way regular siblings sometimes can be, where like a parent might just say all the kids are playing sports, all of them are going to
You're
do
going to get
swimming,
in there too.
they're all going to do whatever, and then like one of them maybe just happens to have an affinity for it and just
Mhm.
be really good at it and is
Hmm.
always ready to go. It's time to play football, let's go. Like, I just want to play football. And so there's also the possibility that like May just has a natural affinity for it and enjoying it
Absolutely.
Hmm.
that OSHA just doesn't have. Maybe she's just not as good at it as, and so it doesn't feel as exciting to get dragged to the coven meeting, if you will, and you know what I mean, like kind of forced to display your powers because you're maybe always going to be looked at as not as good, or all the attention will always be on the one who is better at it, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it is interesting to me that within the coven, I think we are seeing, we are being forced, for lack of a better word, forced to see OSHA as the good one, But I think the Coven sees Osha as the troublemaker.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mother Anastasia is like, they both my babies. I love them both. Let them be. Oh, but no, you're gonna do the ceremony though. But like, they're my baby. You know what I mean?
No.
But like, Mother Coral is kind of like, yo, she's not in check. She needs to be put in check. We have to
Yeah.
be whatever. You know, they're both in trouble for being where they're not supposed to
Supposed to
be.
be. Mm-hmm.
But I get the feeling that it's like it's always Osha, and May is only out there because Osha's out there, and
Yeah.
Osha would stay away from the tree, the very dangerous tree, by the way. Then May wouldn't be there, and therefore I wouldn't have to go there. And now we have this whole other thing we have to worry about with the Jedi watching us, spying on us, or catching up to us, or whatever it is. And that's all Osha's fault. Which, like, at the end, when they're like standing on opposite ends of the split bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, what have you done? And the other one's like, what have you done?
You done.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, at some point, I feel like we have to get the show that shows the other side of that, like where those other opinions come from, right?
Well, because I mean, especially when you see the Coven like dead, you don't see what actually happens to them, and
Right.
May is highly unlikely to have murdered them. Like
that one didn't. I didn't go with that. Like the
Yeah.
setting of the fire, I was like, okay, I can kind of see it. But then when they started coming back out and just seeing like, oh, she didn't like set the whole entire.
Right.
I'm like, okay, there's a piece of this story that is clearly missing here,
Yeah.
because I can understand the one room you set it ablaze, but everything, yeah.
And
So
we're assuming she set it ablaze because she just set the book on fire, and then you
Valid.
get nothing except pure fire.
Right.
You don't see her run off. Like,
Here's the thing. The whole thing is a little weird. That whole thing is like super weird. Like, it's a part of me that makes me feel like May wasn't even never in that room. Like, I don't like it, just doesn't like it makes no sense. Even for real, like the turn, like that kind of like, you always mess things up. Why do you have to? But here's the thing about it. So they were only, we're going to call it halfway through the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So May received something that Osha did not.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of power that gave her. I don't know what kind of anger that may have given her, right? There are theories that say this is about being able to transfer one's life or one's soul onto another person, right? This whole like practice of being able to like transfer one's essence from one body to another, and that this may have been like one of the practices, the kind of thing Jedi were looking to shut down, where like she made them say, like, you promised to
continue.
to take, like, on my death.
Yeah.
When I die, you will continue this on. But like, why them specifically? Again, we know that they were created by Mother Anastasia, that it wasn't a quote unquote natural thing. We don't want the Jedi to know how that happened. What do you think is going to happen if they find that out, right? There is no father. So if this was in some manner her transferring either some level of her ability or some future version of herself or something like that into her, if there's an ability for her to wield some of that, if because they're twins, they're interconnected and maybe they both get some of that, but like, you know, they complete a portion of this process, and now May has this circular, you know, adornment, we're going to call it burned, I guess, into her forehead now, right? That is a lot like the one that Mother Anastasia has. But OSHA doesn't have that, or isn't supposed to have it,
Mm-hmm.
because they were unable to complete the ceremony. They were
Mhm.
interrupted before it was completed. So we don't know what that really means in terms of it not getting completed, or like if that was a thing that is supposed to go to both people. That's part of why they were doing it, was because it was a big deal that they were twins and that they have this other. So like there's all this other stuff that like kind of happens in this episode. And, being angry at the Jedi, not just for interrupting, but for being somewhere that they technically don't
I
have
mean,
jurisdiction,
Yeah.
right?
But having
Um,
those expectations.
of like, well,
You're not allowed to train kids. Only we're allowed
yeah,
to train kids.
I know. Hey, listen, that was the thing I was thinking about when they said it. Like, child labor. That's our bit. You can't do
I mean, kind of, kind of,
that.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is very much like the march of Christianity through everywhere else, and
Mhm.
like we must stamp out any other religion, and if you believe in some other god, that's crazy, because there's only one god and it's our god, and whatever, right? And for those people, for those religions, their power of god worked.
Mhm.
Sacrifices worked, or you know what I mean, like in the same way anybody who follows any religion can choose to say that the things that they saw under one circumstance or
Mhm.
another, clearly this works, clearly the power of prayer is a thing, or whatever. That's kind of where we are, right? That they specifically say this is not about right and wrong, this is not about light and dark, this is about power and who's allowed to wield that power,
Mhm.
Yep.
who's allowed to use it. um there are undertones of government and all of that kind of stuff that
Yeah.
are sewn very deeply, as like the force police show up flashing their badges, which are technically lightsabers.
Lightsabers.
You know what
Yep.
I mean? And you got the one green cop who clearly don't really know what he's doing, but we could just control his mind. Like we could just shut Slim down and feed
Yep.
the entire dark side of the force into his eyeballs right now. And if you want him back in his right frame of mind,
You need to leave. You can get some out of here.
you better get low. I mean, there is a part of me that thinks, all right, they're only afraid because these are the cops.
Mhm.
Because there's only four of them. I'm like, there's
Right.
no way they can outforce this entire coven of force users. Like, there's just no way.
Yeah, I don't.
And she like didn't bat an eye before she took his soul. I was
Yeah.
just like, you know what I mean? Like, but that kind of power, being able to do something like that, also makes me go, bro, it's totally possible that May went in that room, set that fire, and it wasn't her. She ain't have no idea. They just
Mhm.
walked her in that joint. You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah.
like, you ain't going nowhere because you're about to ruin this for all of us.
Mhm.
So you're not going.
Yeah.
This kind of leaves a lot of questions, which any good mystery, every time you learn something new, it raises more questions.
Yep.
Very valid.
Absolutely.
Very valid.
Frosty,
Mhm.
what are your questions?
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
Yeah.
I want to know who actually started like the entire fire. I
Mhm.
want to know how the coven died. Like I want to know where the Jedi were when all of this was happening. What happened to May when they fell? Like,
I want to start
So,
throwing out some theories to some of your questions.
Mhm.
Like, is it possible the coven chose death, poisoned themselves the same way they learned
mm,
to use the poison of the Bunta tree, like she used it on
But why?
Master.
Why would they
Why
do
would they?
that when they have the girls? Like,
Well,
technically,
again,
I would say they
I
have
would
the
only say
girl.
that They have a girl,
Yeah.
maybe,
But they
right?
didn't.
They're
So they
gonna
didn't
be
finish the ascension ceremony.
correct.
So killing themselves prematurely seems not like something they would do. They have
It
plans and
does,
thoughts. Like,
correct. But it also makes me wonder how much of their plans hinged on completing that ceremony.
Hmm.
Like what we don't really know what the true purpose of that ceremony was for, and then what that meant going forward, right? And the thing about it for me is like there's one thing to have a child who's like, I don't want to be a swimmer, I hate swim class, right? So when you have somebody being like, I don't want to be a witch though, I want to be a Jedi, or whatever, and then being like, no you don't, and she's like, well no, yes I do, no you don't, right? But the fear that she had of completing the ceremony, the hesitation that was in her voice as she was being asked to repeat the words and complete the ceremony, like she didn't want to do it. And that fear of doing it to me was a lot more than just like, I do not want that mystic circle burned in my forehead, because it didn't look like it hurt. But like, it seems to me that she knows that it means something, that like once she does it, she can't
That's it.
undo it.
Can't go back.
Something like that, right? Like there is no, you no longer have an option. Like there wouldn't be an option for her to complete this at age 8. And then later on just be like, you know what? I don't really want to do this. I want to go be a Jedi. Or like,
I'm just gonna wipe this off.
like that's not, but okay. I'm just asking because they are played up like a cult.
yes.
Covering of witches, blah blah blah. Cults have a tendency to look like or to poison themselves and just be like, you know what, this isn't working.
Forget
This
it.
is what it is. So
Yeah.
because they're just like laid out, like in the same room they were in. It all happened so fast, and like I've actually heard theories that like, oh, we think the Jedi went in there and killed them all. It just didn't look like that to me.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah,
look like
because
that.
if
You know what I mean?
lightsabers would have gone off or anything like that, I feel like we would have been seeing marks, just subtle signs that lightsaber whatever had been going on in there for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, no smoke inhalation. It happens that fast. I don't think, like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
I
again, it
just don't
just
know that they necessarily like took it themselves. It's possible somebody fed them that poison.
right, right. And I
But
think that so is it possible that there is somebody either amongst their ranks or who someone else who was watching them, who now the Jedi are too close, and this is a problem because we have this quote unquote Sith Lord who is training or has trained May. Did this person do it? Oh, you messed up. Now you got the Jedi down here on our backs. We got to wipe this clean. And somebody else who wasn't them killed, who wasn't the Jedi. And again, like, because the idea of going down the road that like May's anger is misplaced at the Jedi for feeling like the Jedi are responsible for it, and or misplaced at, again, she's been told that Osha's dead,
right.
and Osha's been told that May is dead. And so if the Jedi told Osha that, then whoever this Sith is that's training May, I assume told her the same thing and would very easily have blamed it on the Jedi. But to kill all of them would certainly be a much more Sith thing to do.
Absolutely.
Right? And here's the other piece of it. Even for May's training, like if you go back to the first couple of episodes, there's this whole thing where it's supposed to be Jedi do not attack unarmed people.
Yeah.
Right? And so if that is what their way is, and her response to that when that was said to her in the first episode by Andara was, yes, you do. But if no, they don't, and she's been led to believe by the person who's training her that is in fact what they did, she could be very wrong. still, she did have a Jedi like willingly drink the poison. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
Right. He did. He's got guilt on his conscience. So
There's
But
way
also,
more.
somebody had control of him.
that is very true.
Very easily had control
Easily.
of him.
That is very true.
So for all he knows, even though he took the poison, he did murder someone or some people and technically wasn't responsible for it in his own mind.
Yeah.
These are the kind of questions I have, Frosty.
Hey, listen, I want to know truly why the Jedi were there, because they did say, we thought that this planet or whatever was uninhabited.
Mhm.
That something drew them. Well, we think that something drew them to the planet, but clearly they have been scoping out the witches the whole time. Like,
Well,
because
they said that. Well, you're right, but they also did say like that. She asked like, did the Jedi that were like here walking around or whatever, did they leave? But then they also said in like the first couple of episodes that they were like stationed there.
Right.
so there's
Yeah.
a lie. It seems like.
So there's something, you know what I mean? That isn't like, because they look like they thriving. Like their little coven built into the
Right. That
Mountain.
dam of Blendock, is like, I don't know. They seem like they doing okay, but we got to stay inside these walls. That's the other thing that's weird to me. Like, because if the Jedi are like we felt like this planet was uninhabited. What is it that's making the coven feel like they have to stay inside the city walls and not leave it? If they also are like, well, yeah, there's nobody here but us.
right.
Why would you feel like you can't go outside the walls? Also, if you thought the Jedi who maybe did show up were already gone. But that also tells me they're not as good at noticing that someone is following them, spying on them, or is around them as you might assume, which also, again, could mean that there was somebody else who was, walking in their ranks. And, Mother Coral could very easily be related to Darth Maul.
I'd be happy with that. Yeah.
Hey, listen, if that came out, Mari, this show would be immediately tens across the board for everything. Any association to Darth Maul, like right now, they're like, you're of the same lineage here. Now, if you related straight up, tens.
Oh,
I mean,
we're
look,
family, because he's mine.
Family.
Exactly. I mean, look, you're talking about a coven of witches. We know the witches of Dathomir,
Dathomir.
right? Like, clearly this is like way outside of that initially, but it doesn't mean that there's not like an offshoot. Again, they're saying that they were basically hunted down to basically just what they have, which also makes me feel like they never say specifically that it is the Jedi that did that to them.
Right.
It's just assumed that that's the case. That doesn't mean that's the case. Because again, when you're talking about power and who's allowed to wield it, it could very well be that there are dark side users or Sith who are also after these children for the same reason that the Jedi might be after these witches. Could be in a coven that's just caught in the middle, that just feels like we should be able to use the Force just like everybody else can.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to be, bad one way or the other. And so if somehow the Jedi found out that like, oh, looks like there's these Force users that also have children that are training them and they're not supposed to be, it's also possible that there's another sect that the Jedi is unaware of because they're the Jedi and clearly they don't know, right? That is like, oh, there's this coven that has children that were not born of a father that are Force sensitive. This is a move. Like, I want to make this move.
Yeah.
There's like, it's almost infinitely intriguing, right? That it could be either way. It was also kind of interesting to me that when there are no other children at all, like they say that, like there's no kids at all.
Yeah.
So you can kind of understand the importance of there being children, because how else do you live on or whatever? But then there's also, it's all women anyway.
Right.
Does that mean that there were men and they were hunted down because this creation of kids is a unnatural thing and isn't supposed to be done? And so only these women are left, right? You have a mother who created them and a mother who carried them, but you don't have males. There are no children. That's just weird that there are no kids at all. And they got, and that one witch was super old.
Oh, there was everyone just stepped aside. She was just sitting there like oh,
She was like Yoda old.
Yoda.
I'm just saying, like, she was like
Wisdom.
Yoda old.
She had their wisdom.
But also like Yoda wise. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, this ain't gonna go the way you think it's. So that's also interesting to me, right? That it's kind of like, it seems to me that like clearly at some point there were children, because Mother Anastasia is like, she's doing what kids do. That's how kids are supposed to act. All right, so you know
how this works.
You know kids and you know how they act. You clearly are not someone who hasn't. We also don't know how long they live. We don't know that they don't in some manner use the Force to live longer than normal anyway. Is this practice of, doing this ceremony and like maybe moving your soul to the next person, is that how they generally continue to live on? Can you only do it with kids? Is that part of why it's so significant? Like, it just jokes. I got questions.
There's questions.
Why are you asking all them questions? I don't. It just, it seems to me that there's a lot more to be told within this story than what is happening with the centralized characters of May and Osha.
Yeah.
And I'm still a little like, why was my man so evil when he was looking at Osha and was like, you look just like her? Like, it looked like he was gonna force choke her. Like, I don't know. And she looked like she was gonna kill him. Like, she just, drew down on him. So I don't know. Like, here's the thing. I don't love this episode.
I'm in the same boat.
I don't think it's bad, but it's kind of like,
you gave me too many extra questions. Like, you gave us the backstory. Cool. You gave us a lot more. Like, look. We're trying to get these few things already, but no.
I need one question answered. Damn it, just one.
Yeah, because like I could have easily gone into this thinking to myself, like, okay, are there really twins, or is something else happening, a force projection kind of thing, whatever? But then I'm like, well, nah, clearly there's two of them. But then I thought about it, and I'm not sure. Because I feel like, and I need to go back and really watch it, but I feel like outside of like, I guess Coral treats them like, does she ever talk to both of them?
Yeah.
Do they both respond to her?
I think so.
I don't. It's almost like,
I don't know. I need to rewatch it.
I feel like I'm trying to think of where it's almost like there's two personalities with the one, and maybe the reason why, like, because like the first thing I think of when Jedi go to fight, like they don't pull they weren't pulling out their lightsabers. Maybe this was them being the reserve because they knew who a part of it was. Until it seemed like I don't know. It just doesn't. It's weird.
It's super weird to me, right? That they have like their whole, like their little poem they say, like, born as two but always one, or something like that, or vice versa.
Whatever it is, yeah.
And
It's like Fight Club.
Exactly,
It's
bro.
like Fight Club. I was thinking
Exactly.
about it for a second.
Because there's this moment where like here's what was bothering me as a parent. It was pissing me off that like there were adults in the room having conversations and talking about important things, and they were just fighting,
Yeah.
like pushing each other and shoving each other, and nobody's even looking at them. They're not paying attention to them
Nope.
at all. And so like in my head, I'm like, how does nobody see this?
Yeah.
Right. And then and like, so I know that there's like there is the moment where Mother Anastasia is like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention. But it almost seems to me like she's talking to both of them at one person.
Mm-hmm.
Like she knows that there are two personalities within this one being in some way. She like talks about, hey, they're going to attack you at once, or, you know, whatever. Hey, your enemies are not always going to wait to attack you. And in the moment when May is defensive and has to like kind of push back against Mother Anastasia, Osha just hides behind her, as if Osha doesn't exist and couldn't possibly in that moment. And to me, Mother Anastasia not being like, Osha, get from behind
Get
your
on
sister
there and block this.
and, like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe the version of this character that is May is the more powerful, force using, I have a dark side person within this person who is also like,
I think you're doing too much.
I don't think so. Listen,
here's the
I was
thing.
already throwing the theory out there that like they are two people, but it's like they originally were one. So I don't think his is actually far fetched any more than that is.
Here's the thing. I hate that idea. And if that's the case, I'm gonna be real mad.
Like, I don't want to be right on this one.
I'm gonna be real mad. But there's just something so weird about the way that they talk about them and the way that they treat them. And like, I know that Mother Anastasia does like have a moment where, hey, sweetie, it's okay. Like, if you want to go be a Jedi, that's perfectly okay. But it's not. And to me, like, as a parent, you kind of talk them down from that. Hey, I understand. I do understand that. However, they have hunted us and or persecuted us and or have done, you know, whatever. And it seems to me that like her having an understanding of just this light side that exists within, you know, this child, and is like feeding one and, you know, not the other. Listen, I think there were two beds in their bedroom. Like, now it's messing with me. Like I don't, it's messing with me.
Now you.
I think there's too much evidence showing that they are both real. Like the
Give it
sweet
to me.
creams, they get the sweet creams. Like they're both acknowledged by others.
The spice creams, the drug treats, the spice creams. I'm just saying.
But there's that, like they are acknowledged by other people in the walls. So
Kind of,
yeah.
I would say it's not.
It's so not crystal clear.
Yeah.
And again, here's the thing. The only reason why I have allowed this theory to even bubble is because of how much they just ignored them. Like they literally just like, again, like I was waiting for somebody to snap. Hey, get it together. This is important. Pay attention. And that just like doesn't happen. And the way that it happens once Mother Anastasia does acknowledge that it's happening, it doesn't happen in a way that's like, hey, the two of you have to stop fighting. You both need to be blah, blah, blah. It feels it's directed at them, but them as a whole, not them as individuals.
Serena and it just was really had to share a bed when we were younger. So I mean, the single bed is not necessarily a theory. Like,
it's not, but it certainly feels like a kind of thing that, like, if you were going all out for this in this show, you would like give them.
They're also living in hiding. Like, they're technically in hiding.
You're right, but like, I don't. I get that, but this is the thing that's weird to me. When they said in the first couple of episodes, the way they made it sound when it was like, oh, she burned down the house, like in my head, it was like a little hut or something. Like they were in like a tent, or you know what I mean, or something, and like it burned.
But you see Soul reach for May, and then he ends up having to save Osha because May's like, no. I think there's definitely two.
Sure, I'm just saying that there's a part of me that would be
willing to bring them back together. That's what it is.
Willing to make me angry by being like, no, the Force is strong enough with her that she actually can Force project like
a second
herself into being, you know what I mean, like that she's that segmented in the first place. Again, partially maybe because of the way that she was created, right? Like, if Anakin Skywalker's midichlorian count can be so high that it's off the charts, and even Master Yoda doesn't have a midichlorian count this high, then certainly these two, if they were essentially created the same way, that to me means that they are, I say they in quotes, a child of the Force. Meaning that they could have powers and abilities and strength that like nobody else, right? And that could also be why they're so coveted by the Coven and or sought after by, because again, to me, there also has to be something like, where do whispers of, we heard you were training children, where's that come from? And it's been like 8 years. It's been 8 years. Because they're not little kids.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm so glad you hate this theory, Frosty. Because if it's right, you will be so mad.
Those 10, those 10s of hers, they're gonna come down to a 9.
Again, it's just one of those things where I feel like it's being treated so weird.
Yeah,
the mystery of these children. And when I think about it, and again, I need to go back and rewatch the episode, but even during my first watch through, the way that they were being treated by individuals just walking around, it felt like they weren't being acknowledged. And it seems like it would be like, whatever, man. Like, kids don't learn to be kids without other kids around. Like, it's just not you. Because if every other person in their vicinity is an adult, they're gonna act like, yo, you get in line, do what you're supposed to do, blah blah blah. And like, I get that even there's some pushback between like different choices of parenting between like Mother Coral and Mother Anastasia. Like, one's like, no, they can have some spice cream, and other one's like, no, she left the compound. Like, we can't just keep giving them, whatever. Nobody else seems to care at all what they're doing. It just was weird. They're just like, and look, maybe something got cut or edited differently or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an odd focus, in my opinion, on like the fact that they were like kind of pushing and shoving and whatever.
I thought that was very odd.
And like nobody even looked at them like yo. Like nobody was like, yo, mother. There was no like, Mother Core gonna get you. Like you better like there wasn't even like a little bit of like, hey man, y'all might want to chill out because I don't know. And it just made it seem really weird. And then like there are so many other weird occurrences that kind of happen, in that moment. But again, it is you got one that's got a mark on her head and one that doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the only reason why she survived the fall. Maybe there was somebody else there to catch her.
Yeah. Could be.
Jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you have questions.
It's just like the whole like I said, I think they're like two halves of one whole being. Like I don't know. It's just weird things. It's just weird, like the way things are being presented. And I thought with getting the backstory, I was like, all right, cool. We'll get to see what transpired and why they're so mad or why she's so mad. But no, we just opened up a whole nother tin can of worms in doing so with it. And so this has me pulled in to want to continue the story. Because like it's not the type that right now I'm like, you know what, I don't want to watch this no more. This is the guy, okay, you got me asking questions, so let's see where this is gonna go to.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that again, even going back to like one of Frosty's original theories, that like that moment in the shop, like if you like she doesn't even believe that her sister is alive. So for you in that moment to just be like, you look just like her, is like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know? Because it seems like it seems like you've known the whole time that maybe they both were, around in some manner. And then there's also a thought for me that maybe it's like, yep, they could absolutely obviously be separated and there's a need to bring them back together. Like maybe they need to complete this ceremony.
Yeah.
That didn't get completed. Because I'm still trying to figure out what that ceremony did to May. That's different. That makes sense. Jones, what's your score for this episode?
I'm at a 7. It's okay. I'm at a 7 still.
Frosty?
10.
I am at like a 7.5 with like room to grow. Like
That's where
I love that it gave so many more questions because it just makes me want the next episode. You get the lightsabers, you get the Force, and different aspects of it, different cultures, the way they view it. You get so much in this episode.
I agree 1,000%, but I am only a fan of open-ended questions. When we get to the answer, I'm not. I can't like. We
could have gotten a answer. Like something could have been answered for us, and then
like real talk. Like I feel like if you had any questions at the end of the first and second episode, this episode didn't actually answer any, even though there are things you now know you didn't know. Yeah. So you have more information, but you still don't have any answers. You're still collecting clues on the way to where you're going, and we've added additional mysteries to the mystery, right? So like initially it's like, well, what actually happened? which is a very broad, right? But you can narrow that down by the end of the first couple of episodes of like, what did the Jedi do that like they weren't supposed to do? Because clearly there seems to be, that's the direction we're leaning in, is by the time we have Jedi willing to take their own lives based on it, clearly they did something, or they think they did, right? And they also throw in, all right, well, who's this mystery Sith? Is it Mother Anastasia? Did she somehow survive? Like, y'all know I don't hate cliffhangers, but I don't love them. And this episode very much feels like on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Like, I'm so like, it's just, and here's the thing. A lot of times I feel pretty good about like where I think the next episode is going to pick up. But right now, I don't know if like we walk into the opening of this next episode and we are in quote unquote present day.
Time.
Right.
Are we still in the past, but picking up from the end of the fire? Do we go back even further than that to find out what persecution led them to going off? Are we going to see this creation of life that isn't supposed to happen?
Yeah.
In some manner? So like now it's like, all right, well, now it doesn't feel to me like we're going in one direction. I don't know where we're going.
So many paths.
And that is anxiety inducing. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for a fork in the road.
Yeah, even a couple of them. But
bro, I'm for 5 forks in the road. Here's the problem. If I get to a fork in the road and I can go left or right, but I go straight and just walk through the woods instead of taking a path, that's where we are right now. Right now, we're not on a path. It doesn't mean we're not going to get there. It means we've created a shortcut. I think this is faster. I'm just going to go straight. That's where I'm at right now. And so 7.5, it's kind of like, that's where I am, because I want to know more. I really do. I want to know where Indara, I want to know where that second tattoo came from on her face.
Indara's? Oh, yeah.
She has like 2 dots on her face in the first episode, but there's only one
in this one.
Yeah. Ooh. I want to know what that is.
You guys caught that she did realize that was May.
What do you mean?
I called it after the first 2 episodes. She moves May's hair and sees the swirl. And she goes, "You." Yeah. That was like one of the only Star Wars theories I've ever gotten right.
Oh, well, you know what? Good for you. I definitely said that in the beginning. Like, clearly she knew who she was.
Well, it was, I mean, people were like, maybe she's just saying, why is Osha? Like, wouldn't you be surprised if it was Osha?
Oh, yeah, no, not me. I definitely was like, once it became clear that there were 2 of them, I mean, it was like, oh, yeah, she, and.
But we didn't know
when Indara.
We didn't know at first when Indara saw the mark. We didn't know that there were 2 at that time.
Right. Yeah. That's what. Yeah. But she knew who she was. Yeah. She asked the right questions. Who's training you? Who trained you?
Yeah.
That was the whole like. I have an unidentified Force user. Like, she really reported that joint like a cop. That's a problem right now. That's a problem for me. You know what I mean? Like, I got an unidentified male. Like, it was pretty bad. Yeah, I think there's the trailers show more Indara, so there's clearly more flashbacks. Because there's other stuff that
we gotta explore it.
Yeah. But we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. I am excited for the next episode, and I could watch that episode and be like, episode 3 was a banger. Not there now.
No, I'm hoping we'll get to that point.
Be like, oh, this is like it could like
That's what we're like. People are talking like maybe this is one of those shows where you have to see all the episodes before you realize this
I'm really starting to bomb. I'm really starting to feel that way, and like Gabe said in the beginning, like giving us those first 2 episodes just right off the break together the way that they did. I feel like that was because of kind of what you said too. The 2 of them were together, and now we're gonna have like these individual stories almost, and then the last 2 episodes will like bring everything back together again. But like you said, there's going to be at least, to me, 2 more flashback episodes.
Which is like, again, which that would put us, if there's 1 more flashback episode, we're halfway done.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If they do the last 2 episodes the way they did the first 2 and they're split between the 2, like I actually do think you could tell that story even with all the flashbacks in that time frame, because you know enough to know how they got trained, how like you kind of need to see Osha make the decision that she doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore,
mm-hmm.
and walk away, and like you kind of need that from her. You kind of need to get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, nah. I mean, I'll be very upset if like somehow clearly like she's been off. She was training with Jedi for however long, and like she was force projecting herself to train with a Sith at the same time. Like I'm just, you know what I mean? Like,
hey Luke, you got some competition out here.
He ain't that good. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna wrap this episode up. I want to thank you, Frosty, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Looking forward to next week. I can't wait to talk about whatever.
More questions.
Definitely.
Better be at least 1 answer.
Doubt it.
The hope is there's at least 1 answer.
Yeah.
I doubt it. This has been your episode of Spoiler Boys for the 3rd episode of the Acolyte Destiny. We're out. Tools and loose.
Loading snacks.